The first thing Lady Sabine Valor did after becoming Duchess of Thornmere was order every mirror in the western wing uncovered. For 11 years, the mirrors had remained hidden beneath sheets of grey silk. No servant had ever explained why. Sabine assumed it was another of Duchess Leonora's strange habits. One more joyless rule created by a woman who had forgotten how to live. "Take them all down," Sabine commanded, standing in the centre of the Duchess's dressing room. "I will not inherit another woman's fears." The maids hesitated. Then, one by one, they pulled away the coverings. Sabine smiled as her reflection appeared in 12 mirrors at once. She wore Leonora's pearls, Leonora's emerald gown, Leonora's silver coronet. Even the room now belonged to her. Only 3 weeks earlier, she had entered Thornmere Palace, through the servants' courtyard, hidden beneath a travelling cloak, so the household would not see the Duke's mistress arriving after midnight. Now every door opened before her, every servant bowed, and Leonora, the woman whose life Sabine had envied for 6 years, had left the palace with a single trunk and no public protest. Sabine had expected tears. She had expected accusations. She had expected Leonora to cling to the marble staircase, while guards pulled her away. Instead, the former Duchess had walked calmly through the great doors at dawn. Before entering her carriage, Leonora had turned to Sabine and said only 6 words. "You have no idea what you took." Sabine had laughed. She was not laughing now, because in the largest mirror, directly behind her reflection, someone had written a message in faded white wax. Sabine stepped closer. The words were nearly invisible beneath the polished glass. "The 5th dies before winter." Her smile disappeared. Who wrote this? The servants lowered their eyes. Sabine turned sharply. I asked a question. An elderly maid named Cressa clasped her hands against her apron. "It was there before Duchess Leonora came to Thornmere, Your Grace." Sabine stared at her. "Before Leonora?" "Yes. And no one removed it." "We tried." Cressa's voice dropped. "It always returns." The room fell silent. Sabine looked at the other mirrors. For the first time, she noticed tiny marks carved into their wooden frames. Names. 4 names. Edeline, Morwen, Clara, Isabet, each followed by a date. Sabine's throat tightened. "Who were they?" Cressa did not answer. Sabine turned back to the glass. The message remained. The 5th dies before winter. She forced herself to laugh, though the sound came out thin. Superstitious nonsense. Have the mirror replaced. "Yes, Your Grace. And burn the old one." Cressa looked up in alarm. Sabine remembered the household rule against open flames inside the western wing and corrected herself impatiently. "Then break it. Bury it. Throw it into the lake. I do not care." Cressa curtsied. But when the servants moved toward the mirror, a deep bell sounded somewhere beneath the palace. Once, then twice, then a 3rd time. Every maid froze. Sabine felt the vibration beneath her shoes. What was that? No one answered. Cressa. The elderly maid's face had lost its colour. The Duchess's bell. Sabine frowned. "I rang no bell." "It does not ring from this room." "Then where?" Cressa glanced toward the floor. "From beneath it." That afternoon, Sabine refused to remain frightened. She ordered musicians into the South Gallery. She commanded the cooks to prepare a 12-course banquet. She invited every noble family within 2 days' journey to witness her first official appearance as Duchess of Thornmere. By sunset, the palace glittered with diamonds, polished silver, and embroidered silk. Sabine descended the grand staircase beside her husband, Duke Cassian Valor, with one hand resting lightly on his arm. This was the moment she had dreamed of. For years, she had watched Leonora walk down those same steps while nobles praised her quiet grace. Sabine had despised her for it. Leonora never fought for attention. She never begged to be admired. She simply entered a room, and everyone seemed to understand that she belonged there. Sabine had believed the difference was the title. Now she possessed it. Yet as she reached the ballroom floor, the applause sounded polite rather than warm. The nobles bowed, but their eyes followed the Duke. Not her. Sabine lifted her chin. They would learn. At dinner, she sat in Leonora's place, beneath the carved crest of Thornmere, a silver stag surrounded by 5 black stars. Cassian raised his wine. To my wife, Sabine, the new Duchess of Thornmere. The guests murmured their approval. Sabine smiled. Then every clock in the palace stopped. Not gradually. Not one after another. All at once. The dining hall clock froze at 9 minutes past 8. The small gold clock on the mantel stopped at the same moment. So did the clock carried by Lord Berwick, who pulled it from his pocket and stared at it in disbelief. A servant dropped a tray. Sabine glanced at Cassian. He looked irritated, not frightened. "What is wrong with this household?" she whispered. Cassian continued cutting his meat. Old machinery. Leonora allowed the palace to fall into neglect. Across the table, Dowager Countess Olyra gave a quiet cough. Sabine turned toward her. The Countess had known every Duchess of Thornmere since childhood. She was nearly 80, sharp-eyed and famous for remembering secrets other people preferred forgotten. "Something amuses you, Countess?" Sabine asked. "Not at all." "Then speak plainly." Olyra placed her spoon beside her plate. The clock stopped for Leonora too. Sabine's fingers tightened around her glass. When? Her first night in that chair. A murmur moved around the table. Cassian's expression darkened. "That is enough." But Olyra continued. "They stopped for Clara before her, and Isabet before Clara." Sabine looked at the 5 black stars carved above her. "What happened to them?" No one answered. Sabine turned to Cassian. He avoided her eyes. That was the first moment she understood her husband knew more than he had told her. After dinner, she followed him into the blue library and closed the doors. What were their names? Cassian poured himself another drink. Whose names? The women before Leonora. He exhaled impatiently. Sabine, do not allow old servants and bored widows to fill your head with ghost stories. You knew the clocks would stop. I knew they had stopped before. And you said nothing, because it means nothing. The mirrors have their names carved into them. Cassian finally faced her. Then replace the mirrors. I ordered that already. Good. Sabine crossed the room. Why were they covered? Cassian's silence lasted a second too long. She stepped closer. Tell me. He stared toward the rain-streaked windows. My mother said the women of Thornmere became obsessed with their own reflections. She covered the mirrors after my grandmother died. How did she die? An illness. What kind? I was a child. And the Duchess before her. I do not know. Sabine searched his face. Cassian had always been careless with lies. He looked away when inventing them, but grew unnaturally still when hiding the truth. Now he was perfectly still. What did Leonora know? Sabine asked. At the sound of his former wife's name, something passed through his expression. Not love. Not regret. Fear. It vanished quickly, but Sabine saw it. Leonora knew how to make herself seem important, he said. Sabine smiled coldly. And yet you never removed her until I arrived. I removed her because I chose you. No, you removed her because she agreed to leave. Cassian slammed his glass onto the desk. She had no choice. Sabine flinched, then hated herself for it. Cassian lowered his voice. You are Duchess of Thornmere now. Stop behaving like a frightened servant girl. He left without another word. Sabine remained in the library, staring at the closed door. She had spent 6 years believing Leonora was the obstacle between her and happiness. But what if Leonora had not been trapped in Thornmere? What if she had been holding something inside it? Near midnight, Sabine returned to the western wing. The servants had removed the large mirror from the dressing room, but pale scratches remained on the wall where it had stood. She lit no lamp. Moonlight from the windows was enough. The palace felt different at night. The portraits appeared watchful. The corridors seemed longer. At the end of the gallery stood a door Sabine had never noticed before. It was narrow, painted the same grey as the wall, with no handle, only a small silver keyhole. Sabine touched the pearls around her neck. That morning, when she had opened Lenora's jewellery cabinet, she had found a tiny silver key hidden beneath the velvet lining. At the time, she assumed it belonged to a private box. Now she retrieved it from her pocket. The key slid perfectly into the lock. The door opened inward. A cold staircase descended beneath the palace. Sabine hesitated. Then she remembered Lenora's final words. "You have no idea what you took." Sabine stepped down. The staircase ended inside a circular chamber directly beneath the Duchess's dressing room. 5 stone chairs faced a sealed wooden cabinet. 4 of the chairs bore names: Adeline, Morwen, Clara, Isabet. The 5th chair was blank. On the floor lay bundles of letters tied with black ribbon. Sabine picked up the nearest one. The letter was addressed to Duchess Clara Vailor and dated 31 years earlier. "Your Grace, the northern tenants have received no grain for 14 days. His Grace's officers have taken the winter stores to repay debts that do not appear in the estate books. We beg you to intervene before the villages are emptied." Sabine opened another. "Duchess Isabet, the Duke has ordered our sons removed from the schoolhouse because their fathers could not pay the new road tax. You are our final hope." Another. "Duchess Morwen, the physician has not been paid. The children's ward will close unless the palace releases the funds you promised." Sabine's unease turned to confusion. These were not love letters. They were pleas. Hundreds of them, all sent to the Duchesses of Thornmere. She moved toward the cabinet. The silver key unlocked that too. Inside were 5 shelves. 4 held ledgers. The 5th was empty. Sabine lifted the newest volume. Lenora's name was written across the front. When she opened it, she discovered lists of payments made to villages, schools, hospitals, widows and retired servants. But none of the money had come from the Duke. Every amount had been taken from Lenora's personal inheritance. Page after page showed the same pattern. Cassian borrowed. Lenora repaid. Cassian raised taxes. Lenora secretly returned the money. Cassian dismissed workers. Lenora employed them through distant estates. Sabine's hands began to tremble. The life she had envied, the jewels, the gowns, the silent authority, had been built over a hidden pit of debt and desperation. At the back of the ledger, Lenora had written a final entry. Sabine read it aloud. "To the woman who sits after me, the curse of Thornmere is not in the mirrors. It is not in the clocks, the bells, or the winter stars. The curse is that every duke creates ruin, and every duchess is expected to hide it." Sabine turned the page. One last sentence appeared. "I have done so for 11 years. I will not do it for a 12th. The bell beneath the palace rang again. This time Sabine understood where it came from. Behind the 5 chairs stood a long cord connected to the villages beyond the eastern hill. It was not a ghost's warning. It was an alarm. Someone outside the palace was calling for the Duchess. Sabine climbed the stairs and entered the gallery. Cressa was waiting at the top. The elderly maid held a sealed letter. "A messenger has come from Dunwold village, Your Grace." Sabine stared at the letter. "What happened?" Cressa swallowed. "The Duke's collectors arrived this evening. They seized every cart, every horse, and the village grain store. Why? To cover his Grace's newest debt." Sabine broke the seal. The message contained only one desperate line. "Duchess Lenora always came when the bell rang. Will the new Duchess come too?" Sabine looked toward the darkened windows. For the first time since taking Lenora's title, she no longer felt victorious. She felt the weight of hundreds of unseen eyes waiting beyond the palace walls. She had wanted Lenora's chair, Lenora's jewels, Lenora's husband, Lenora's power. But standing in that silent gallery, Sabine finally understood the truth. She had not stolen a life of privilege. She had inherited a collapsing duchy, a dishonest husband, and a promise made by 4 dead women to protect everyone he harmed. And somewhere beyond Thornmere, Lenora was free. Before we continue, please subscribe to Nightfall Tales and like this video, as this encourages us to keep creating quality content. Sabine did not wait for morning. She changed out of Lenora's emerald gown, removed the silver coronet, and ordered a carriage prepared for Dunwold village. Cressa stared at her as though she had spoken in another language. "At this hour, Your Grace." "The villagers rang for the Duchess." "Yes, but... and I am the Duchess." The words sounded powerful when Sabine said them. Yet as she fastened a plain travelling cloak around her shoulders, she felt none of the triumph she had imagined the title would bring. She had believed becoming Duchess of Thornmere meant servants, jewels, and admiration. Instead, before her first day had properly ended, strangers were already begging her to repair damage she had not caused. Sabine descended the rear staircase. At the bottom, Duke Cassian stood waiting. He wore no coat, and his expression was sharp with anger. "Where are you going?" "To Dunwold." "No." Sabine stopped. The authority in his voice would once have frightened her. For 6 years, Cassian's attention had seemed like sunlight. A smile from him could make her forget every insult whispered behind her back. A cold glance could ruin her entire week. Now she saw something she had never allowed herself to see before. He did not look powerful. He looked cornered. "The collectors took the village grain," she said. "They collected what was owed." "You told me Thornmere was wealthy." "It is. Then why are you seizing winter stores to repay debts?" Cassian's face hardened. "You have been reading Lenora's ledgers." "I have been reading the truth." He stepped closer. "Those books were private. They were hidden beneath my room." "Your room," Cassian repeated with a humorless smile. "You have worn the title for 1 day, Sabine. Do not mistake a chair at my table for authority over my estate." Her fingers tightened beneath her cloak. "This estate is failing." "It is not. The schools, the hospitals, the farms, Lenora paid for all of them. Lenora enjoyed making herself necessary." Sabine studied him. She was necessary. For the first time, the admission did not feel like defeat. Cassian's jaw tightened. "You will remain here. And if I refuse..." He lowered his voice. "Do you remember where you came from?" The question struck exactly where he intended. Sabine remembered a narrow house beside the old market in Lawnwick. She remembered repairing the same 2 dresses until the fabric would no longer hold a stitch. She remembered her mother teaching piano to wealthy children who laughed at the worn cuffs of her sleeves. Cassian had found Sabine at 19, playing music at a winter gathering. He had told her she was too beautiful for ordinary rooms. She had believed him. Now he leaned toward her and whispered, "Without me, you would still be invisible." Sabine looked at the man whose love she had mistaken for rescue. Then she opened the carriage door. "Without Lenora," she said, "you would already be ruined." She climbed inside before he could answer. The journey to Dunwold took less than an hour, but the road seemed to lead into another world. Thornmere Palace had been blazing with chandeliers when Sabine left. Dunwold had only moonlight. The village stood between 2 low hills, its cottages gathered around a stone well. Doors were open despite the cold. Families crowded the central square, where 3 estate wagons were being loaded with sacks of grain. The Duke's chief collector, Master Grellan, supervised from horseback. He was a narrow-faced man with silver buttons on his coat and a habit of speaking without looking directly at anyone. When Sabine's carriage arrived, he appeared more annoyed than surprised. "Your Grace, return the grain." Grellan glanced at the villagers. That would be unwise. "Did you not hear me?" "I heard you clearly." Sabine stepped into the square. No one bowed. The villagers simply watched her. An older woman held a sleeping child against her shoulder. 2 farmers stood beside an empty cart. A baker's wife clutched a flour sack as though it were the last valuable object she owned. Sabine suddenly understood what she looked like to them. She wore fine leather shoes and a cloak lined with fur. She had arrived from the palace that had taken their food. To them, she was not a rescuer. She was merely the newest face of the same cruelty. Grellan dismounted. His Grace ordered the collection personally, and I ordered you to return it. You do not command the estate officers. Sabine looked at him. Who does? The Duke. Then why did the villagers ring the Duchess's bell? A silence followed. Grellan's expression changed. Only slightly. But Sabine noticed. He knew about the bell. Everyone knew. A man stepped forward from the crowd. He was perhaps 40, with tired eyes and flour dust still clinging to his sleeves. Because Duchess Leonora answered it. His voice held no respect for Sabine, only accusation. "What is your name?" she asked. "Thomas Venn." "Were you the one who rang?" "My daughter did." A young woman emerged beside him. She could not have been more than 17. Her gaze remained fixed on Sabine's pearls. "You are wearing her necklace," the girl said. Sabine touched them instinctively. "They belong to the Duchess." "No," the girl replied. "They belong to her mother." Whispers moved through the crowd. Sabine felt exposed. She had worn the pearls as proof that Leonora had been defeated. Here, they looked like stolen property. Master Grellan cleared his throat. "If this spectacle is finished, I have instructions to complete." He turned toward the wagons. Sabine moved in front of him. "What debt requires this grain?" "That is not a matter for public discussion." "It is now." Grellan's eyes narrowed. His Grace signed a private agreement with Lord Roderick Vale of Highmere. Payment was due yesterday. "How much?" "I cannot disclose." "How much?" The villagers waited. Grellan finally answered. 80,000 crowns. Sabine went still. She had never heard of a private debt that large. What did the Duke purchase? Grellan said nothing. Thomas Venn gave a bitter laugh. He did not purchase anything. Sabine looked at him. He lost it. A murmur spread through the square. Lost it where? "At the gaming tables in Belgrave," Thomas said. Grellan's voice became cold. "Be careful." "Why?" Thomas demanded. "Will you take our roofs after the grain?" Sabine's thoughts raced. Cassian had told her he travelled to Belgrave for parliamentary meetings. He had returned with gifts, stories and promises. Leonora had always seemed colder after those journeys. Sabine had assumed jealousy was the reason. Now she knew Leonora had probably been calculating how many families would pay for Cassian's entertainment. "Unload the wagons," Sabine said. Grellan did not move. "You have no legal power to reverse the Duke's order." Sabine pulled the silver key from beneath her cloak. "I have access to the Duchess's ledgers." For the first time, real fear entered Grellan's eyes. "So? They contain every payment Leonora made to repair the Duke's decisions. If the grain leaves this village, those ledgers will be copied and delivered to every noble family in the province." Grellan stared at her. It was a bluff. Sabine had no copies. She did not even know whether exposing the books would accomplish anything. But Grellan did not know that. "You would disgrace your husband," he said. "My husband appears to have accomplished that himself." The villagers remained silent. Then Thomas Venn walked to the nearest wagon and lifted down a sack. A second man joined him. Then a third. Grellan's officers looked toward their master for instructions. He gave none. Within minutes, the grain was being carried back into the village storehouse. Sabine watched until the final sack was unloaded. She expected relief. Instead, Thomas approached her. "What happens tomorrow?" Sabine frowned. "The grain will remain here." "And the collectors?" "They will leave." "What happens when the Duke sends them back?" Sabine had no answer. Thomas's expression softened, but only slightly. Duchess Leonora never came with one solution. She came with the next 5 problems already considered. Sabine heard the comparison for what it was. She had succeeded tonight. But succeeding once did not make her Leonora. "I am not Duchess Leonora," she said. "No," Thomas replied. "You are not." The words wounded more deeply than Sabine expected. She turned toward her carriage. Then the young woman who had mentioned the pearls hurried after her. "Your Grace." Sabine paused. The girl held out a folded piece of paper. "Duchess Leonora left this with my father 2 months ago." "Why?" "She said to give it to the next duchess only if the bell was rung, and she came." Sabine looked at Thomas. "You knew I would come." "We did not." His honesty stung. Sabine opened the letter. The message was brief. "If you are reading this, then there is still hope for you. Do not trust Grellan. Do not sign anything Cassian places before you. And when he tells you the 5th chair is waiting for your name, ask him what happened to his mother." Sabine read the final line twice. Cassian had told her his mother died from illness. The letter suggested otherwise. She folded it slowly. "Where is Leonora?" Thomas shook his head. "She did not tell us. She must have gone somewhere. She said Thornmere would search for her when Thornmere had finally learned why it needed her." Sabine returned to the palace just before dawn. Cassian was no longer waiting at the door. The corridors were silent. She went directly to the Blue Library, intending to search for documents connected to his mother. The doors were locked. Sabine tried the silver key, but it did not fit. As she turned away, she heard voices inside. Cassian was speaking to Master Grellan. "You allowed her to interfere. She threatened to expose the ledgers. She does not understand them." "She understands enough." Sabine moved closer to the door. Grellan lowered his voice. "Leonora prepared her." "No," Cassian said, "Leonora despises her." "Then why leave the key?" A pause followed. Sabine's pulse quickened. Cassian answered quietly. "Because Leonora knew Sabine would open the chamber. And now she will do what every Duchess of Thornmere eventually does. Protect the estate?" Cassian laughed. "Protect her title." Sabine felt the meaning settle over her. Cassian believed she would hide his debts because exposing him would also expose her humiliation. To save her new life, she would have to protect the man destroying it. That was the curse. Not merely that every duke created ruin, but that every duchess became trapped by the shame of admitting what she had married. Grellan spoke again. "The Hymir agreement is ready." "Good." "She has not signed it." "She will." "And if she refuses?" Cassian's reply was calm. "Then tell her the agreement was Leonora's final request." Sabine covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping. Cassian planned to use Leonora's name to deceive her. She waited until the men left through the library's second entrance. Then she returned to her rooms. A document was waiting on the writing desk. Beside it lay a note in Cassian's hand. "My dearest Sabine, Leonora arranged this agreement before her departure. Signing it will protect Dunwald and every northern village from further collection. I regret that our argument prevented me from explaining sooner. You now have the chance to finish the one good thing she began. Your husband, Cassian." Sabine read the agreement. It promised immediate cancellation of the village debts. In return, the Duchess of Thornmere would place her personal property under the Duke's authority for 7 years. Sabine owned almost nothing, but as Duchess, she had been promised an annual estate allowance and several properties traditionally held in the Duchess's name. Signing would give Cassian control of them all. He had not brought her into Thornmere because he loved her. He had replaced Leonora because Leonora's money was gone. Sabine was the new name he needed at the bottom of the page. A soft knock sounded. Cressa entered carrying the morning tea. Sabine held up the agreement. "How many times has he done this?" Cressa's face fell. "Your Grace, how many duchesses signed away everything they owned?" The maid placed the tray down carefully. 4. Leonora too? No. Sabine stared at her. Why not? Because she arrived with enough wealth to rescue the estate without surrendering control of it. And when her wealth was gone, she began refusing him. Sabine looked toward the hidden staircase. Is that why he removed her? Cressa's eyes filled with sadness. No, Your Grace. Then why? The maid glanced at the door before whispering. Because Duchess Leonora discovered what happened to his mother. Sabine remembered the 5th empty chair. What happened to her? Cressa reached into her apron and placed a small portrait on the desk. It showed a graceful woman with Cassian's eyes. Her name had been written beneath the image. Duchess Elspeth Vaylor. Sabine frowned. Her name was not carved on the chairs. No. Why? Cressa's voice trembled. Because she did not die. Sabine looked up. Cassian said she did. The Duke has said many things. Where is she? Cressa leaned closer. Still inside Thornmere. At that moment, the bell beneath the palace rang 5 times. Not 3, as it had before. 5. Cressa's face turned pale. What does that mean? Sabine asked. The maid stared toward the floor. It means the sealed room has been opened. A sound came from behind the wall. Slow footsteps climbed the hidden staircase. Sabine backed away as the narrow door began to move. Someone was coming up from the chamber. Someone who had been hidden beneath Thornmere long before Sabine arrived. And just before the door opened, Cressa whispered the words Sabine least expected to hear. Whatever she tells you, Your Grace, do not let the Duke know his mother remembers everything. Before we continue, here is today's controversial question. Was Sabine truly guilty for taking Lenora's place, or was she also a victim of Cassian's deception? Comment your answer below. Should Sabine be forgiven for helping destroy Lenora's marriage, or should she suffer the consequences of the life she tried to steal? The hidden door opened no wider than a hand. A pale face appeared in the darkness. Sabine expected an old woman. Instead, the woman standing on the staircase looked barely 50. Her silver-streaked hair had been cut unevenly at her shoulders, and her plain grey dress hung loosely from a body made fragile by years without sunlight. Yet there was nothing weak in her eyes. They were Cassian's eyes, only clearer, more watchful, more alive. Cressa dropped to her knees. Your Grace. The woman looked at her for a long moment. Do not call me that. Her voice was quiet from disuse. Then she turned to Sabine. You are wearing Aurelia's pearls. Sabine touched the necklace. Lenora's mother. The woman nodded. She gave them to her daughter on the morning Lenora married my son. Sabine removed the pearls immediately. I did not know. No, the woman said. That appears to be how Cassian prefers his wives. She stepped into the dressing room. Sabine glanced toward the open staircase. Are you Duchess Elspeth? I was. Cassian told me you died. He told the entire province. Cressa rose and closed the hidden door behind her. Sabine's mind filled with questions. Why were you beneath the palace? Elspeth looked toward the document on the desk. The same reason that agreement is waiting for your signature. Sabine followed her gaze. You refused to surrender your property. I surrendered nearly everything. Elspeth crossed the room slowly, studying the mirrors that had been uncovered. I paid his father's debts. I sold my family lands. I dismissed half my household and told society I preferred simplicity. I lied to tenants. I lied to creditors. I lied to myself. She paused before the empty space where the largest mirror had stood. When Cassian inherited the title, I warned him not to repeat his father's mistakes. And he imprisoned you. Not at first. Elspeth's expression hardened. He tried charm, then guilt, then fear. When those failed, he declared me unwell and confined me to an apartment in the northern tower. Sabine looked at Cressa. But you said she was inside Thornmere. The tower chamber was sealed years ago, Cressa explained. Duchess Lenora moved her below the palace when she discovered the truth. Elspeth gave a faint smile. She brought me food, books, and news from the villages. More importantly, she listened. Why did you remain hidden after Lenora left? Because Cassian believes I know where something is. Sabine felt the story tightening around her. What? The Thornmere Covenant. Sabine had never heard the name. Elspeth walked toward the 5 stone chairs below, and Sabine followed her down the staircase. Cressa remained near the door to listen for approaching footsteps. Inside the circular chamber, Elspeth stood before the blank 5th chair. The first Duchess of Thornmere was not born to wealth, she said. She was the daughter of a miller. When she married the first duke, the surrounding lands were nearly empty. Together, they invited families to settle here. Elspeth touched the carved name Adeline. Years later, when the duke began taking more than the people could pay, Adeline forced him to sign a covenant. What did it say? That Thornmere did not belong to the duke alone. Sabine frowned. Legally and permanently. The covenant gave the Duchess independent authority over the villages, schools, mills and hospitals. If the Duke endangered them through debt or neglect, the Duchess could separate those lands from his control. Sabine stared at her. Then Leonora could have stopped Cassian. She tried to find the original document. And you know where it is? Elspeth faced her. I know where it was. Sabine waited. My husband discovered its hiding place. Elspeth continued. He removed the covenant from the family archive and gave it to a magistrate he trusted. Cassian has spent years searching for it because he fears Leonora found it first. Did she? Elspeth's eyes moved toward the ledgers. She found something better. Before Sabine could ask what she meant, Cressa hurried down the stairs. His Grace is coming. Sabine's heart pounded. How does he know? The library passage. He must have seen the chamber was opened. Elspeth showed no fear. Let him come. No, Sabine said. If he sees you, he has hidden me for 18 years. I am finished helping him maintain the lie. Footsteps sounded above. Cassian entered the dressing room. Sabine? She climbed the stairs before he could approach the hidden door. Cassian stood near the writing desk, perfectly dressed despite the early hour. His gaze moved from the unsigned agreement to Sabine's face. Why have you not signed? I wanted to understand it. There is nothing difficult to understand. You gain control of everything placed in my name. For 7 years. And in return, you repay a debt you created. His expression tightened. The villages benefit. At my expense. You are my wife. The way he said it made wife sound like property. Sabine stepped between him and the hidden entrance. Did you marry Leonora for her inheritance? Cassian sighed. Leonora has filled your head with poison, though I cannot imagine how. She left her ledgers. And now you think numbers tell an entire marriage. No, your lies do. Cassian moved toward her. Sign the document. Sabine did not move. Where is your mother? The confidence vanished from his face. Only for an instant. Then he laughed. My mother has been dead for years. From what illness? I told you. I was young. You were 27. Cassian stopped smiling. Sabine continued. You imprisoned her because she refused to give you the last of her property. You know nothing about my mother. I know she is alive. Silence filled the room. Cassian looked toward the hidden door. Sabine saw the moment he understood. His face became expressionless. Elspeth, he called. The hidden door opened. His mother stepped into the room. For several seconds, neither spoke. Cassian recovered first. You should not have come out. Elspeth looked at the son who had erased her from the world. And you should not have become your father. You were ill. I was inconvenient. You embarrassed this family. I tried to save it. Cassian glanced at Sabine. This woman is confused. Leonora encouraged her delusions so she could undermine me. Elspeth almost smiled. Still the same frightened boy. I am the Duke of Thornmere. And yet every woman who loved you had to pay for the privilege. The words landed harder than any accusation Sabine had heard. Cassian crossed to the desk and picked up the agreement. Whatever performance Leonora arranged ends now. He placed a pen beside the document. Sign it, Sabine. No. He stared at her. Sabine felt the old fear rising, the fear of returning to obscurity, of losing the title she had sacrificed her reputation to gain. Then she remembered Dunwold. She remembered Thomas, asking what would happen tomorrow. She remembered the 4 names carved into the chairs, the women who had spent their lives concealing the shame of powerful men. I will not sign, she repeated. Cassian's voice became dangerously calm. You will have no allowance, No carriage, no household. Your family's debts will become public. Every person who welcomed you yesterday will pretend they never knew your name." Sabine's chest tightened. He knew every weakness she carried. That was why he had chosen her. Not because she was fearless, because she was afraid of being nothing. Elspeth watched her carefully. Sabine picked up the pen. Cassian relaxed. "There," he said softly. "You are finally being sensible." Sabine lowered the pen to the paper. Then she drew a single line through the agreement from top to bottom. Cassian's face changed. She signed beneath the line, not as his obedient wife, but as witness to his demand. Then she wrote the amount of his Belgrave debt and the names of the villages from which payment had been taken. "What are you doing? Creating a record? You foolish woman." "Perhaps." Sabine placed the pen down. "But I will not become the fifth name on that chair." A knock sounded at the main door. Before Cassian could respond, it opened. Dowager Countess O'Leary entered, followed by Lord Berwick, Thomas Venn, and 3 provincial magistrates. Cassian stared at them. "What is this?" Countess O'Leary removed her gloves. "A meeting of the Thornmere Stewardship Council. No such council exists." "It does now," said one of the magistrates. Thomas held a leather case. Sabine looked at Elspeth. "The covenant." Elspeth shook her head. "No, Lenora's better solution." Thomas opened the case and removed dozens of signed pages. For 11 years, Lenora had documented every debt Cassian created and every personal payment she made to prevent the estate from collapsing. But the ledgers were only the beginning. She had also collected statements from tenants, servants, tradesmen, and creditors. She had obtained copies of hidden loan agreements. She had persuaded the provincial court to review the ancient Thornmere laws. The final page contained a ruling issued the previous week. Cassian's repeated misuse of estate funds had triggered the original covenant's protections. Until the court completed its investigation, he no longer controlled the villages, schools, mills, or hospitals. That authority had passed to the lawful Duchess. Cassian looked at Sabine. "Lenora is no longer my wife." "No," Countess O'Leary replied, "but Sabine is." For the first time since Sabine had met him, Cassian looked genuinely afraid. "You cannot give her my lands." "They were never yours alone," Elspeth said. Sabine understood Lenora's plan. She had not left the key because she trusted Sabine. She had left it because she understood Cassian. He would replace any woman who stopped protecting him. And by allowing him to choose Sabine, Lenora had ensured there would still be a duchess inside Thornmere when the court's ruling arrived. The life Sabine had stolen had been bait. The title Cassian gave her had become the instrument of his undoing. "You planned this with Lenora," Cassian accused his mother. Elspeth shook her head. "Lenora planned it alone. Where is she?" A voice answered from the doorway. Far enough away to breathe. Everyone turned. Lenora stood in the corridor, wearing a simple dark blue travelling dress. No jewels, no coronet. No trace of the woman Sabine had once envied, yet the entire room seemed to shift around her. Cassian moved toward her. "You came back. Not for you." Lenora's eyes settled on Sabine. Sabine could not speak. She had imagined this meeting many times. In every version, Lenora hated her. That would have been easier. Instead, Lenora looked tired and sad. "You knew he would choose me," Sabine said. "I knew he would choose someone. You let me enter this house. I left you every warning I could without giving Cassian reason to suspect the ruling was coming. You could have told me. Would you have believed me?" Sabine wanted to say yes, but she remembered the woman she had been 3 weeks earlier, wearing victory like perfume. "No," she admitted. Lenora nodded. "Neither did I when Elspeth first warned me." Cassian looked from one woman to the other. "This is absurd. Sabine wanted your place. She despised you." "I did," Sabine whispered. Lenora's expression did not change. "I told myself you were cold, proud, ungrateful. I believed that if I had your title, I would live your life better than you did. And now?" Sabine glanced at the hidden chamber. "Now I know you were carrying everyone while we criticized the way you walked." For the first time, emotion broke through Lenora's calm. She looked away. Sabine removed Aurelia's pearls from her pocket and held them out. "These belong to you." Lenora closed Sabine's fingers around them. "They belong to the woman my mother hoped I would become. I am sorry. I know. No, you know I regret being deceived. That is not the same thing." Sabine forced herself to continue. "I pursued your husband while you were protecting people I never bothered to see. I helped him humiliate you because I wanted proof that I had won. Whatever happens to me next, I will not pretend I was innocent." The room remained silent. Lenora studied her for a long moment. Then she said, "Good." Sabine blinked. "Good? Regret that asks for comfort changes nothing. Regret that accepts responsibility might." Cassian scoffed. "How touching." Sabine turned toward the magistrates. "What happens to the Duke?" "His private properties will be reviewed," Lord Berwick said. "He will retain his title unless the Crown rules otherwise, but he will have no authority over the protected lands. And his debts? They remain his." Cassian's face went pale. "You cannot expect me to live without the estate income." Elspeth looked at him. "The villages have been expected to live without grain." No one answered him after that. 3 months later, Thornmere Palace no longer glittered every night. The costly banquets ended. Unused carriages were sold. The gaming debts were separated from the village accounts, and the northern grain stores were placed under local supervision. Sabine remained Duchess of Thornmere, though society whispered that her marriage had lasted less time than a summer garden. Cassian moved into a smaller family residence outside Belgrave while the courts examined his finances. For once, no woman went with him to protect his pride. Elspeth returned publicly to the northern wing. Her portrait was restored to the long gallery, where visitors stopped before it and wondered how a woman declared dead could look so alive. Lenora did not return as Duchess. She purchased a modest house near the coastal town of Marraby and began advising women whose estates had been placed under their husbands' control. Sabine visited her once. Then again. Their conversations were never easy, but they were honest. On the first day of winter, Sabine entered the western dressing room and ordered the mirrors covered again. Not because she feared them, because she no longer needed 12 reflections telling her who she was. She kept one uncovered. Across its wooden frame were carved 5 names: Adeline, Morwen, Clara, Yisabet, and beneath them, Sabine added 2 more. Elspeth, Lenora. She did not carve her own. Not yet. Instead, she placed a small plaque beneath the mirror. It read, "The curse ends with the woman who refuses to hide it." That evening, the bell beneath Thornmere rang. Sabine descended the staircase and found a message from Dunwold. The school roof needed repairs before the winter rain. She smiled, gathered the ledgers and ordered her carriage. As she crossed the palace entrance, she passed the chair where she had once sat, wearing another woman's pearls, convinced she had stolen the perfect life. Now she understood there had never been a perfect life to steal. There had only been a title made beautiful by the sacrifices of women whose suffering had been mistaken for grace. Sabine had entered Thornmere wanting to replace Lenora. Instead, she became the first Duchess who did not rescue the Duke. She rescued the people from him. And far away in Marraby, Lenora received a letter carrying the Thornmere seal. It contained no plea for her return. No request to repair another man's mistakes. Only one sentence in Sabine's handwriting. "The bell rang today, and this time I knew what to do." Lenora folded the letter and looked toward the open sea. Then, at last, she smiled, because the woman who had stolen her place had finally understood the truth. A duchess's life was never made powerful by the man beside her. It became powerful the moment she stopped allowing him to define its worth.